Hi, welcome to Notes on Slope. We will be needing some colored flare pens, maybe some highlighters as well. All right, let's get going. Slope is defined as the change in y over the change in x. So this is sometimes referred to as delta y, delta being change, over delta x. So let's take a look at these graphs here. These first ones, what do they all have in common? Well, they all have a positive slope. They're going uphill. From left to right, we're going uphill on all of these. If I want to figure out what the slope of this is, my change in y is 1 unit. My change in x is 2 units. So that slope would be 1 over 2. If I take a look at b, I look at my change in y, that's going to be 4 units, over my change in x, which is going to be 1 unit. That one's going to be 4 over 1. In these two, exact points are not shown, so it looks like I have an exact point here and an exact point here. So I can see that, so this box is kind of taking up some space. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my lines kind of this way. And I see that my change in y is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My change in x is 1, 2, 3. So the slope here is 8/3. On this one, I see that I have exact points, several of them, right there. So up 1 to the right 2 means I again have a slope of 1/2. If I look at all these slopes, what do they have in common? Well, they are negative. They are going downhill when I read them from left to right. So down 2 over 2, that's going to simplify to be a 1 over 1 slope. I can see that there's exact points all the way down. This one, I see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one's going to be 5 over 4. This right here, 1, 2, 3, 4 over 2. 4 over 2, I can see, oh look, there was a point between them. Gets me 2 over 1. Let's see, I have a point here, and I have a point here. So it looks like I have a vertical change of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Horizontal change of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 8 over 5, and then this one was 1. All right, remember positive slopes should be uphill, and negative slopes are going to be downhill. All right, so now let's continue looking. Another way of saying it is rise over run. Rise is your vertical movement. Run is your horizontal movement. Go ahead and pause the video real quick and identify the slope for these. Identify if they're positive or negative and what the slope is. All right, welcome back. You should have found that this one is negative, negative, positive, positive. This is going to be 3 over 2, negative 3 over 2, negative 1 over 3, positive 3 over 2, and positive 3 over 1, or just 3. All right, and remember throughout this video, if you need to, feel free to pause and get caught up. If I'm going too fast, rewind if you need to hear an explanation again. All right, go ahead and pause and take a look at these next four. Identify if they're positive or negative and what their slope is. All right, so here I see that this one is going uphill, uphill, downhill, uphill. So this is positive, positive, negative, positive. And asking yourself if it's positive or negative is a great way to then check once you've calculated your slope. And we're going to be getting into calculating it as well. So I see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 5 over 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This one's 7 over 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 2. That tells me that I missed a point, and I see that it's right here. So this is 3 over 1. And this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 over 3. Now, these aren't the only kinds of slopes that we can see. There's two other kinds of slope, and those are 0 and undefined. A 0 slope shows that there is no change. There's no vertical movement. An undefined slope shows that there is no horizontal movement. So we can't count a rise or a run with this. So if we look at our slope, we see horizontally it keeps going and going forever. We are going to have, there's no vertical change. So we would end up with a 0 for our rise, and then our run is just going to be continuing on. And the opposite is true over here with the undefined slope. So a 0 slope is always a horizontal line, and an undefined slope is always a vertical line. A 0 slope is going to have a 0 in the numerator, so it's going to be 0 over some number. An undefined slope is going to have a 0 in the denominator, so some number over 0. Now, we'll talk about in a sec how to calculate these and how you might figure those out. But visually, you should see that this is a 0 slope, and then this is an undefined slope. Okay? Moving on to some special cases, two lines are parallel if they don't intersect and they have the same slope. So if I look at these two lines right here, I can see that, let's find some points. Looks like I have a point here and a point here for these two. So this looks like it's a 3 over 2. And I can see over here I have a 3 over 2 as well. 3 over 2. So these have the same slope. They are never going to intersect with each other. Same thing over here. So these two both have a negative 3 over 2 slope. So I might see if these were, so the equations of these lines, I see that this one has a y-intercept at 3. This one has a y-intercept at negative 2. So I would have y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 3, and y equals 3 over 2x minus 2. So if you're given two equations and they have the same slope and asked where they intersect, they're not going to. Over here we have, these are called perpendicular lines. Two lines are perpendicular if they intersect to form a right angle. The slopes of perpendicular lines are negative reciprocals, which means that when you multiply those slopes, the result is negative 1. So let's take a look at these lines. So I'm going to put them in two different colors just so it's easier to see and for us to analyze. All right, I see that the orange line hits at -1, and it looks like we have a slope of 2/1. So that's going to be y equals 2/1x minus 1. For my yellow line, I see that I'm down 1/2, down 1/2. So that one is going to be, and it hits at +1. So I have y equals -1/2x plus 1. I can see that these two slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. And the same thing is true for these two graphs. See if you can figure out what the equations are for the lines of these two graphs. Over here, you should have y equals 1/2 x plus 2 and y equals 1/2 x minus 1. That's those two graphs. Over here, you should have y equals 1/3 x plus 2 and y equals -3/1 x, and it looks like it's going to cross down here even though it hasn't quite crossed the y-axis yet at -6. If you have any questions as we go along, feel free to write a little note on the side of your paper, or you can post the questions in Canvas and we'll try and answer them tomorrow. All right, so all of this so far is visually looking at the graph and determining the slope. But you're not always going to have the graph in front of you in order to be able to count boxes. So we need a way of determining the slope without doing that, when we're just given some points. So that's where the formula comes in. Since we are given data in the form other than a graph, it can be easier to find slope using the slope formula. The slope formula finds the distance between the vertical y values and the horizontal x values, the distance of the points without using a coordinate grid. So what operation do we use to find the distance between two numbers? We use subtraction. Here's our formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Well, where do these y2, y1, x2, and x1s come from? What you do, so you have two sets of points, x1, y1, x2, y2. These are your points. So we're going to find that distance by subtracting. So let's take a look at some of these. So I find it that sometimes it's easier to actually label x1, y1, x2, y2. And then that way I literally just plug my numbers in. So I can say -2 minus 1 over 2 minus -4. And this is where you have to remember your integer rules. Remember things like your keep, change. So I remember my keep, change for each of these. And I find that I get -2 plus -1 is -3. And 2 plus 4 is 6. Now this can be simplified. What is it as it's simplified? -1/2. Let's take a look at another one. Let's jump over here to number 5. So again, I want to say x1, y1, x2, y2. So 3 minus -3 over 6 minus -2 gives me 6/8, which is then going to be 3/4. So go ahead and take a couple minutes to finish out this page. Tomorrow, we will talk about what the right answers are for this page. You don't have to do the back. We'll use the back page right here. We'll use that for warm-up tomorrow. So you are just finishing this front page right here. You have 8 more problems to go. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them in Canvas or write them on your paper and we will address them tomorrow. Thanks for listening.